The NFL Combine is on. Man, really worried here. This whole thing was going to be, kind of tossed to the side. Now, there was, if you're just tuning in or catching up to this stuff, almost 160 players who were rep by 14 different agencies. They said they refused to participate in the Combine because of the, quote, bubble. The Combine put together a bubble, COVID restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. But the feeling was up until yesterday that the league was going to make some modifications and they were going to look into this stuff and that they were going to figure out a way to kind of please everybody. And it looks like that is what happened. The quote-unquote bubble will go away. So now we will have an NFL Combine here. So, Brady, we have avoided a disaster here because I know everybody was really worried and concerned that the Combine wasn't going to take place. So big time here.
Let me just point one thing out that I think was miscommunicated, which happens all the time in today's age. By the way, side note, I was watching our local news, and I was listening to, it wasn't even the sports anchor, it was like the news anchor who was giving an update on the sports. And I'm listening to every story going, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. My God, if someone's watching this right now, they're going to be watching and be completely misinformed what's happening.
It's great.
I don't know who wrote the teleprompter script because clearly the news anchor, you could tell, wasn't sure what was happening, even stumbled over some stuff. But I'm thinking to myself, that is the day and age we live in. We are so misinformed all the time. So the idea of a boycott to the Combine was never the case. There was never going to be a boycott, okay? What the players or athletes were going to do is they were going to show up and not do a damn thing besides the medical testing, which is really the whole entire point of the Combine, and interviews. That is it. That was the only two things they were going to do. They were going to elect to then wait until their pro day to test for all their on-field drills and the bench press and all the other crap. So that was what was going to happen. Now, because the NFL apparently thinks everyone listening out there, as well as the players and their agents, are so naive, the NFL implemented a stupid bubble policy after we witnessed a playoffs that COVID seemed to go away. In the college football playoffs, COVID seemed to go away, and then magically reappear to put these players in a bubble for the Combine. It was just, it was all about optics. That's what this was. It was stupid. It was dumb. They think everyone's naive, and it was all about optics. And so, fortunately for the players and the players' union, the NFLPA, which supported them in this, even though they're not a part of the union yet, they teamed up and said, we're not going to participate in your now made-for-TV event, which used to be in the early hours of the morning and the midday. Now you've moved to prime time. And now you've tried to profit off of these young men who haven't signed a contract yet, who haven't been drafted yet, and you're asking to show up so you can then sell potentially either the rights to it or everything else that comes off of the Combine, which is now an annual event on the NFL calendar. You're asking these guys to basically show up, shut up, and follow your rules. It was so stupid on the part of the NFL, and it's shocking when you consider how powerful the NFL is that they could have an event like this where they could lack any foresight and understanding what was going to happen. So the good thing is the agents stood up for the players, as they should, and now you've got the NFLPA who actually backed the agents, which we haven't seen in over a decade. The NFLPA have ostracized the agents of the NFL players to the point where, unlike any other professional sport, they are no longer involved in a lot of the collective bargaining agreements or negotiations or anything else for that matter, which is one of the reasons why they keep getting taken to the cleaners every time the NFL and the NFLPA come into negotiation, because they don't have savvy negotiators like agents more involved on behalf of the players in the NFLPA, who can honestly, too, negotiate really from both sides since they talk to teams and they talk to, obviously, their players. So that is the one shining light, aside from the fact that we now get the normal Combine that I think we all hoped for. It's the fact that the NFLPA and the agents maybe have struck a common chord and can start moving together moving forward.
I mean, the idea of the combine, as Brady mentioned, is for, obviously to make sure guys are healthy, to make sure you check their backgrounds, to make sure you feel comfortable about who they are as a person. It's a grueling event. I mean, I can remember, I don't know how if it's changed from the time when I went through it, but I remember it was so grueling. It was so many people touching on me. I got sick. Like, I literally became physically ill where it felt like I had the flu. Like, I didn't do a lot of the stuff that was taking place because I was, like, crazy sick.
You mean they weren't wearing masks?
Well, that's long before we talked about wearing masks.
The reality is you also didn't need to. Like, that's the one thing is, like, we make such a big deal about it. It is so insignificant. Like, based on what you put on film, what did anyone need to see about LaVar Arrington coming out in the draft?
You know what's crazy about that is that the media will still find a way to try to shame you
for not
doing it. I mean, 100%. And then what they do is they create a narrative, like those who participated. Like, I'll never forget.
Like, you don't like competition.
Urlacher competed. Urlacher came out and was like, look, I don't have anything to hide. Like, I'm going to compete. I'm going to do this thing, right? But when you explain logic and reasoning to people, they tend to look at it for whatever they want to look at it for. Like, to me, I said, listen, I'm not in the same situation as Brian Urlacher. Brian Urlacher was a safety / linebacker, not a linebacker. Like, the dude was a linebacker playing safety at New Mexico, right? So if he wanted to go out there and show people that this is the position that he plays, this is how he's going to perform, I can do linebacker drills, different things. We all had different motivations, but that became a narrative. Like Urlacher's the man, LaVar is. I mean, Urlacher went on to have a Hall of Fame career. I didn't. But the idea of it was, when you're there, if you're there for the interviews, if you're there for everything, but you're not going to do everything that takes place. Like, I was going to lift and do drills. I wasn't going to run my 40 because they had always said that old track was slow. So it didn't matter how fast you were. There's a strong possibility you'll test slow on that surface. So I didn't want to run the 40 there. I wanted to run it on my pro day. But when I got sick, I was like, man, I'm not doing anything because I'm not going to be able to put my best foot forward. But to Brady's point, it shouldn't matter, right? It's turned into a show, which the interesting part about it is, mentioning the business aspect of it, you're selling the rights to this show. You're doing a show. It's on television. It's being broadcast. How much are those players getting paid for that show? Oh, wow. Wait, let me check. Nothing. You have a show that the rights are being sold to, that you have wall-to-wall coverage of, that has become really a major event for exposure in terms of brand building for the players and for the league. And you're not paying the talent.
So good for the players for stepping up and the agents and saying, listen, we're not, this is ridiculous. We're not going to be a part of a bubble combine. It's not happening. Like, we'll go get the bare minimum done, but we're not going to take part.
All right. But here's the only problem with that. To be there, it's a necessary evil to say, I'm positioning myself to be a higher draft pick, to have higher value going into the draft, because sometimes it doesn't work out on draft day. So that can leave a lasting impression on an organization as well. What type of guy is he going to be? Is he signable? Is his agent, can we work with his agent? Do we have a history with their agent? There are a lot of issues that can come up. The combine becomes a necessary evil. So you can't get too caught up into good for the player and because they really, in essence, they're not even in yet. So they're still trying to get in.
But don't you guys think there was safety in numbers in the fact that it was almost 160 guys? It wasn't just one guy saying, I'm not going to be a part of this, and all of a sudden he becomes a distraction. You had 160 guys who are like, listen, this is crap. Like the way this whole thing is being done. Yeah. To me, I think there was a little bit of safety in the fact that many people were willing to be a part of it.
Yeah, you're talking about half the amount that get invited.
Yes.
50% of what you got invited. So it would make for a really quick
Right.
a really quick TV show, and probably not all the big names you're hoping for. Now, again, you might get them to walk up and do an interview, and that can eat up some TV time. But I talked to agents with two of the biggest football agencies, and both of them just like they were in shock to a degree that the NFL thought they could just put together this idea of a bubble, which, mind you, how many other professional sports are currently going on? And yet, who is operating within a bubble? None of them. None of them. I mean, we literally
MLB
just allow,
definitely isn't.
70,000 fans to get together in a city that is probably as restrictive as any in the country. And that was with the NFL, for the Super Bowl. And yet now we're going to go back to some bubble scenario? It just, the whole thing never made sense. And yet what they were asking from these athletes was completely unfair. I mean, not only could they not work with, their trainers, whether that's a strength trainer or athletic trainer or a massage therapist or nutritionist. Mind you, the NFL was feeding them. It's not even as if they could, be fed whatever diet they're on or meals that they're being, fed. And I don't know who was catering. And obviously there's good food in Indianapolis. But the reality is there might be certain dietary restrictions or diets these guys are on to be at a certain weight or make sure their, energy levels at a certain point so they feel like they can perform at their best. That's what we're talking about. Like, we're talking about the difference in a tenth of a second making a cornerback a first-round pick versus a second or third round pick, which is millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And for the NFL to be that naive in thinking that no one was going to throw a fit about this, to me it just goes to show you, I mean, how poorly it's run. For it being the best professional sports league in our country, it's crazy they have these sorts of little issues.